What is up, everybody? What is up? I hope everybody is well. Hope everybody is well. Make sure you are doing what you got to do, taking care of business, handling yourself, handling your business, loving your kids, all that, all that, all that. Loving your parents. Keep pushing forward, right? All right, so I was asked a question. I did a live the other day, and at the end of the live, somebody posted a question in the live. I didn't get a chance to respond to it. But I will respond to it here. I did see it at the end. So the question is, what are my thoughts about um, marrying under the age of 25? Now, before I begin to talk about this, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, share, all that kind of good stuff, right? So, and if you are so inclined, please buy me some lunch at some time. Cash App, Venmo, it's all in the description. And most importantly, no matter what you do, at least hit the like button. At least hit the like button. Okay, so my thoughts on getting married under the age of 25. So, my own personal experience was, I was a young guy. I had gotten a really good job, and I got married at the age of 22. My grandmother, with her wisdom, told me that I was way too young. I didn't know myself and all that kind of stuff, right? Of course, she had been married when she was 15. I think my grandfather was 18. Vastly different set of circumstances. Those days are obviously long gone where a guy could just go down to the docks, go get to the mines, go to the factory and get a job that's going to pay him after 30, 40 years and give him a pension and all that kind of stuff. My grandfather and my grandmother both worked at the same place, and then they ended up getting pensions. So that was their experience. But to my grandmother's point, I didn't know myself, and but I was a young guy who was young and dumb and full of baby making material. Was also extremely religious. Had grown up in a Pentecostal church, was very active in the church, and didn't want to be quote unquote sinning or anything like that. So it was my duty, I thought, to get married, and that marriage didn't last, and all that. So, um, so let me talk about the men first. I don't think that it's in today's time, 2025, as I record this. I don't think it's in the best interest of a man to get married. Men are taking longer to reach their financial peaks of 35 ish. They got to go through emotional maturity. So there's the financial maturity, stability, and emotional maturity. Emotional to handle kids if they come into the world, handle a wife with all the emotional roller coasters that go along with that, the good times, the bad times, the responsibilities of home ownership, coming home, right? There's a lot of responsibilities that go along with that. So you got to think about that before someone decides to get married. So I just think that a man really ought not to do that. Now, we may come back to that. We may not. So I'm just kind of spitballing this off the top of my head. For a woman, I think it's a little bit different because they are under more pressure for, having kids and this, that, and the other. And I think a lot more women these days are choosing to put off marriage because they want to seek out their financial freedom, independence. They're thinking about their industries, their corporations. They're thinking about the business world and going far and as fast as they can. So they're putting off marriage. And when they do, they're having one baby, if that, or maybe two. So, things just change. That is the consequence and the repercussions of modernity, where people are putting off marriage. There is evidence, or research, I should say, on both sides of the equation about getting married. Yes, you may have, a good life. You may have uh, you the ability to stay together. Some reports about, if the less body count that you have, then the greater your chances of creating a stable relationship and all that type of stuff. And there's also some research that says the younger you get, then because of the things I've already listed, you financial insecurity or stability and other emotional factors, that you will not have a lasting successful marriage. I think it's a complex question, because and it can't really be summed up in one answer. I gave an answer for men. I mean, I'm going to stand by that. But I think that for women it's different, because you have this fertility window that they are concerned about. You're balancing that a lot of times with whether you want to pursue a career. I think one of the major impediments to marriage for younger people is the current where we live at. I mean, just the current environment. I'm talking about social media. I'm talking about your friends aren't married. I'm talking about the access to going outside, being outside. We outside. The party life. I think all those are things that can really kind of cause the downfall of a marriage. And if you're not careful, if you're not cautious, you're not mindful, you're not strong enough to say no to party lifestyle and all that, then you really ought not to think about it. I can't tell anybody what to do. I'm just going to tell you how to think, and you got to know yourself. And I highly suggest that people understand the environment that they're living in. The environment is calling for, and I'm talking about the environment, the media environment, social media environment. I'm talking about your family, your friends, and all that. You got to think about all that. And are you strong enough to say no? Because to me, when you're married, here's a big secret. And it really shouldn't be a secret. One of the things that can cause a lasting relationship in marriage is the exclusion of other people. You have to be able to exclude other people, their opinions, their thoughts, what they're doing, what they're making, what type of house they live in, what type of cars they're driving. You have to be able to exclude all that. If you're not that type of person, or if you're the type of person who's looking at what other people have, the vacations they take, the Birkin bags that they buy, the cars that they drive, how many kids that they have, if you're comparing yourself, right, comparison is the thief of joy. Comparison is the thief of joy. And if you're a person who's constantly looking at other people to see what they got, and your marriage is not going to, your marriage, particularly if you're younger and more impressionable, is not going to make it. It's not 100% guaranteed, but it's a bad recipe. It's a bad recipe. So that's certainly on my list. You've got to be able to do that. I think another big obstacle that we have is that something I've talked about a number of times already, is this idea of this where we live at, again, with the environment. These Western countries, and I was looking at the numbers the other day. I don't know. I think I took a screenshot. I don't know if I deleted it or not. But where the divorce rates are really, really high and stuff, right? It's all these Western countries. Some of them smaller. The United States is not as high as I thought. I thought it was higher, but it's not. As far as the divorce rate, if I have it, I'll put it up, and I'm not going to go look for it again. But the problem is that we live in an environment that is constantly advocating, pushing for divorce. We're seeing it in social media feeds. We see it amongst our the elites. Who am I saying here? Right, the actors, actresses. Right, it seems to be in the water, and I think that's a bad recipe. I think it's a bad recipe for older people too, right? Because you think, I don't got to work this hard. I'm gonna do it. If things don't go right, I just get divorced. And the idea of sticking to it is in the toilet, and I think that's horrible and detrimental to society, and I think it's horrible and detrimental to anyone who wants to get married. And And listen, I regret that all the time. And I'm making these videos because number one, I'm answering the question. Number two, because I don't want people out there to make the same mistakes I did. And I see the effects. I see what it's doing to society. I see it. 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 And I don't want that for anybody else. And I wish that I could have done things differently. I wish that I could have done things differently. And if I had better wisdom, counsel, advice, stronger sense of self, less ego, um, marriage probably could have lasted. Marriage probably could have lasted. More than definitely would have. You know, so you gotta be able to swallow all that, right? Looking at other people, your own ego. You gotta die to self, as to quote a Christian term that I grew up in church hearing about. You gotta in a marriage, you gotta die to yourself, and that doesn't mean physically die, but you gotta put your own desires aside. And I think that we're living in a time where it's just more selfishness, right? Your job, your education, your career, your happiness, your travel abilities. That's all taking precedent. It's all taking precedent over the family, over the family. And I regret that. I regret that deeply. So these are all things that if you're under 25, you're thinking about getting married, these are things you got to consider. For the guys out there, you got to have a certain amount of emotional maturity, a certain amount of emotional maturity and financial stability. And if you don't have it, it's no sense of bringing kids into the world or marrying somebody and promising to do this, and you still want to run around and you still want to hit the clubs and or you just want to play video games all day and ignore her needs, what are you doing? And same thing for a lady. Are you? And one of the things I wrote in a post, I did a video the other day, and I wrote this in the post, or at least I wrote it somewhere, and I'm gonna echo that again in this video. Is it's not about getting a husband, nor is it about getting a wife. You should be willing to be a wife, and you should be willing to be a husband, and all that takes. And I think unless you can articulate that, unless you can say what that is, say what that means, say what you are willing to give. Here's what my roles, my responsibilities are for being a wife at the age of 23 or whatever. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's my job. Here's my job responsibility. Anytime you fill out a job application, right, they're asking you what your job, they're going to tell you what the qualifications are and what the roles and responsibilities are. So are you meeting the qualifications, whatever those are for that individual that you're going to marry? And are you able to meet the job responsibilities? And here they are. You can't just look at the sex. You can't just look at the good times. You got to look at the bad times. I got to be with you when you're feeling down and depressed, and when you don't feel like cooking, and when we have an argument, and when you want to put me out, and you want to do this, and you want to do that. Unless you're willing to really understand that job description and have some conversations with some older people who've been married for 10, 15, 20 years. And I would go longer, 20, 30 years. Well, I think that the 20 and 30-year marriages can say something. But I think nowadays, if you could talk to somebody who's been married 5, 8 years, 10 years, because they are living through this time of marriage being changed, right? I'm talking about my grandmother. My grandmother got married and all this kind of stuff. But the times have changed so much. And if you can live through social media and still be married and still have a healthy marriage, I don't know how that can be. I don't know. I'm sure it is. It's possible. But I don't know how realistically that can be done when and if in this social media age. I just doubt. I just doubt it. But hey, that's me. That's me. I just think that if you're married, I just think that social media is a death knell. I just think that it's a problem waiting to happen because of the comparison issue. Not saying you're going to hook up with or people in your inbox. Obviously, that's a thing. But just comparison. Their marriage is like this, and they're doing that, and this and that. It's always odd to me when I see people who are married in commenting on single people's stuff. Right? Oh, you guys ought to do this. You got to do that. And I can see commenting saying, "Oh, thank God I'm out the game because this sounds like a mess." I get those comments, but Other people just kind of all up in the business, but whatever. So listen, those are my thoughts. I can't tell you whether it's good or bad. I'm going to tell you what to think about, and I think it's definitely something that men ought to really put the pause on and really, really get married 34, 35, 36, right? Your fertility window is vastly longer, and your financial abilities to support a family are going to just increase as you get older. And if you're a young woman, 24 and under, or whatever, 25 and under, you have you got your fertility window that you got to worry about. And then also you have to worry, where's your level of maturity at as well? Are you able to, as I said, to say no, to be very concerned about, what other people are doing and all this, that, and the other. So, and if you want to, this whole, can I get married? Can I get married and still engage in a career? I think so. I mean, I think you probably got to put off kids for a little bit, but why can't you? I mean, you got to marry somebody who's supportive. Again, you got to marry somebody who's supportive of your career, of your education, as you're taking classes or whatever. I think you got to be supportive of each other. You got to be supportive of each other. My ex was very supportive of me when we went through it. For 4 straight years, I was in school. 4 straight years, maybe longer than that. Maybe longer than that. Maybe 5 or so. By the time I went back, completed my associates, then I went 2 years for my bachelor's and 2 years for my master's. So probably like 5 straight years, and that's 5 straight years of, we had Christmas parties. Okay, I got to stop. I got to go home and do this paper. We on vacation, honeymoons. I got to stop and do this paper. 5 years of that. She was very supportive. So you got to be able to support all that kind of stuff, and that's that, right? And people understand that people get sick. Think about prolonged illness. Things happen, life happens, and this is what you're signing up for. And again, the dynamic of marriage has changed so much that we just don't have to do it anymore. I got my own career. I don't need to stick by this situation. I can just do whatever I want. I can just be a single person doing whatever. And I think that there's a lot of guilt that tries to be placed on ladies in particular for not wanting to engage in family formation, and shaming them and talking and having these conversations with them is not going to work. If they want to be outside and party and all that, I wouldn't even look at a woman like that. I wouldn't even look at a woman like that. I don't. That's me. That's my personality. But I know that some people, are, and so it's an unfortunate situation that we're in. I mean, I'm talking about younger people, but I, as an older guy, I'm still, it hasn't changed. I'm not seeing much of a difference. I'm not seeing much of a difference between a younger person in their 20s, the stuff that they're dealing with, right? Women want to do whatever, the guys want to do whatever. Guys are not up to par. Then you fast forward to a 40s and 50-year-olds. A lot of these ladies too want to be outside and party, and not all of them. Some of them are ready to settle down, but then again, unfortunately, come with baggage and all this kind of stuff. I don't want to talk about the older people, even though I just did. So listen, I think from a baggage perspective, there's pros and cons. You got to weigh a lot of stuff from a baggage perspective. If let's just say you're a 28-year-old guy, I still maintain that they ought to be older. And you're a 24-year-old girl, I mean, your body count is going to be less. You're going to have less trauma, less baggage, less animosity, less hatred for the opposite. I mean, I can't see. And if you can work out all the other stuff, you can get a good job, and you can be focused and driven, and you understand what it takes to be a husband, and you can understand what it takes to be a wife, and you can focus and concentrate and get away from social media and really focus on your family and this, that, and the other. That's it. I think that would probably be a home run. I think that would probably be a home run. You got to shut out the environment. I started to talk about that. You got to shut out the environment. One of the biggest issues that I have within the African American community, and I'll try to put up the clip by George Fraser when he talks about this.
1% of our sisters are not married, 29% will never get married, 63% of our brothers are not married, 30% of them will never get married. There is no culture in the history of humankind that has risen to maximize their full human potential without family at the center of their culture. This only exists. This is an interesting but negative statistic. This phenomenon of the existential crisis of our family only exists among African American black people. It does not exist on the continent or anywhere else in the diaspora. So there must be something in the water. We must fix this. It is a lot easier said than done because it is impacting our wealth. Quick statistics. For 350 years, household median income was dominated by white people. They were number one in this country. They no longer are number one, they're number three, and there's a reason for it. So, who has the highest household median wealth in America? It's East Indians, $104,000 a year. What's the marriage rate in the East Indian culture? 94%. Two are working. Who's number two? Chinese Asians. Household median income $110,000 a year, marriage rate close to 70%. Number three are white people. Household median income $88,000 a year. What's the marriage rate? Almost 50%. Down significantly. Number four are Hispanics. Household median income $61,000 a year, marriage rate close to 70%. We are at the bottom. Household median income $55,000 a year, marriage rate 34%, and projected based on facts and statistics that if we do not fix this, because white folks ain't fixing this, our marriage rate will be in the low teens in the next 20 years. We must, this is an enormous challenge. That's a whole talk by itself on how do we fix it. It can be fixed, but we have to, first of all, understand that this is a problem. No one's talking about this problem. This is a huge problem. It's the number one problem in our culture. So we must fix it.
Is that we don't have a culture. We don't have a culture of marriage. We don't have a culture of marriage. And that is problematic. We don't have a culture of marriage. We don't tell our boys to get married, that their focus ought to be to get married. You know, a lot of it's because we've left the church and religious organizations, the institutions. We don't have that. We don't have that is a detriment to our culture, to who and what we are. It's problematic. It's horrible. It's horrible. And you know, then we get into marriage and we got negative influences in our ear. You don't have to deal with this. Oh, child, you don't got to do that. Your husband don't own you. You could go out and have a party. What do you mean? Your husband don't own what you wear. He's not your boss. You know, you can wear what you want. You know, to the guys, you know, come out and party with us. Oh, it's okay. You know, getting drunk and don't come home at night. And none of that is good. None of that is good. None of that is good. None of that is none of it is good. And we don't, that culture that we don't have, you know, and so you got to understand. So if you're entering into a marriage, if you're young, no matter what, obviously culture you are, but unfortunately, I got to address the African American culture or whatever. If you're entering into a marriage, you know, you got to understand that you're marrying not only that person, but you're marrying their family. And if their family doesn't believe in it, or their family, you know, she got sisters and aunties and mothers and stepmothers and all this kind of stuff that are all outside and this, that, and you gotta think twice about that. Same thing about the dude, right? You gotta think twice about that, man. You gotta think twice about that. This is all family, but they're all partiers, they're all drug dealers, they're all, you know, they're all getting arrested. Those are all conversations you got to have out loud and in your head. You got to think long and hard about this. You cannot be just infatuated. You got to make sure that this is a long-term situation that you're in it for good and for life. You know, I've taken some heat, but I can take it about my thoughts about marriage. Being a limited contract. And listen, I'd like it. I want it to be for life. I want that. But this environment that we live in, it's bad. It's bad. I don't want the D word to be in my vocabulary if I get married. I mean, it's not even a thought. I mean, obviously I'm older now, but as a young person, you think you got life, you got vitality, you got time, and that's why it creeps in. I don't got to deal with this. I just go off and do my own thing. I think I've taken some heat from my stance on no fault divorce. I think that I think you should have to articulate why you're getting a divorce, because of abuse, because of whatever. You got to be able to articulate it. So, and I also think we got to have trainings about them. We got to have trainings about it. I talk about the culture. You got to have trainings, starting at maybe 9, 10 years old. Here's what a marriage looks like. What's her name? Shahrazad Ali. She said something one time I disagree with her. But the more I think about it, the more she was right. She talked about, young boys need to play house with young girls. That way they can practice being a daddy so they can see what it's like. And I thought, hey, got these boys out here playing with dolls. I was disagreeing with it. But the more I think about it, I think she's right. You got to train the boy. You got to train the boys for this situation. What does it mean to be a father? What does it mean to be a husband? What does it mean to be a protector, provider? What does it mean to be able to put the family first? You got to have these conversations. And these conversations are uncomfortable, and I don't think that people want to have all the time. So that's my thoughts about it. Listen, I can't tell you what to do, but I'm just trying to give you some things to think about. And I wish, man, that somebody would have kind of broken it down for me a little bit more. People try to talk to me, but you're young and dumb, and I think that I think what I was missing, in all honesty, was a culture of marriage, a culture, seeing it around. And I saw it at my church, and I saw it, but I think you need people saying, this is what it is. This is what it is. We don't do it. We don't do this. We don't do that. We do this. We do that. And I think that needs to be demonstrated far more. And without that type of roadmap, and without that type of model, I think that it's all doomed. I think it's all doomed. So those are my thoughts and my opinions. Let me know your thoughts, your opinions. Again, there's research on both sides. The less trauma you have, you'll make it. The more religious you are, you might make it, but are you happy? There's also research saying if you get married later on in life, because of your financial stability, you might make it more. Research on both sides. So, all right. Much love and peace.